as we go, but I do believe we are live on the very first episode of MrMostDaysOff Loves Everything, because I love a lot of things. Obviously I love The Simpsons because I do the Best Darn Diddler review show, but this is going to be a platform where I can talk about like other stuff that I love, and I have a feeling I'm going to have a new love soon because I'm about to start my very first Dungeons and Dragons campaign. But you have been playing Dungeons and Dragons for like a long time now? Like, how long have you been playing?
Oh, I just passed my year anniversary, so I'm only like a year and some change into this campaign, but it feels like a long time because it's quite a big world.
And also, I guess you've literally been playing Dungeons and Dragons like since I've known you. Like,
yeah, that's true.
That's been part of your life like the entire time we've been friends. So, yeah, that's cool. Is it only one campaign that you've been playing? No,
so it's the same group of people, but we've done 3 different campaigns now. We just started our 3rd campaign last Wednesday.
Okay. You were telling me about that, actually. That was, you called it Session 0 or?
Session 0, yep.
Session 0.
Session 0. So it's basically, a big part of Dungeons & Dragons is a team building, group dynamic situation. So it's hard to just throw 5 people in to cold water and expect them to bond. So Session 0 is kind of just to get a feeling for all the characters, start to cultivate what that dynamic's going to be. Typically things will happen that, matter to the plot, but no one's going to die in Session 0. That's not the point.
Gotcha. What is the earliest someone has died?
There's a D&D stream I watch. I won't say which one so I don't spoil anything, but there's a D&D stream I watch where 2 characters died Session 1. So it can get bloody real fast if you're not careful.
I found something. I'll read it to you later if we get there. But it's very much in tune with that. But I just thought that was interesting because it's a lot of work to play D&D before you ever actually start playing D&D.
Oh yeah, it's a huge time investment. Like you have to put the work in to be a good player at the table when it's time to be a good player.
Okay. Describe that process a little bit. Like I just went through a character development. I haven't even had a Session 0 yet. So like this is all still very, very new to me.
Well, so here's how I'll talk about it. I'll talk about it through the mistakes I made in the process. Because,
perfect. Right, we only have an hour though.
So. No, thanks. So I started off, the first thing is you have to understand how the actual game works. So that's the first time you jump into D&D will be the most prep work you have to do because you have to learn the functionality of the game. Once you have that down, just building a character is much easier every other time. But the first time, not only are you trying to pick a character, you're trying to pick a character out of this magical world you know probably nothing about. So for me,
it's intimidating. It's a lot.
It's a lot. And that's why I think it takes people some time to get into it and why there can be so much gatekeeping because it really does matter. It makes a big difference having somebody who has already played kind of holding your hand, so to speak, and, just showing you how it's done and having that patience with you. Sometimes groups just spring up where they all do it together for the first time, but often it's a ladder thing where one person brings another person. It's a pyramid scheme. One big pyramid scheme.
Lord, okay, I have to recruit 3 people into the group now.
You have to recruit 3 people into the
group. Or you're not even going to make it out of Session 0.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. So how many characters have you developed in the year that you've been playing?
I've had 4. So I guess technically we've played with 4 campaigns. But one of them, we only got like 1 session off the ground and then scheduling got in the way. So that happens sometimes. Scheduling is the death of most D&D campaigns.
Trying to get like multiple adult people's lives to all be able to like come together at a literal table is probably very, very hard. Scheduling kills more characters than villains ever will. Like, that's just the best way to say it. That's funny. Thanks, Alexander. And he also loves pyramid schemes. And Liz for calling out that burn I did have on you earlier.
Yeah. Well, hey, not only is D&D a pyramid scheme, this stream is a pyramid scheme. I keep saying scream instead of scream.
We're a screaming. It's a pyramid scream.
We're a pyramid scream.
You want to scream about it. Like,
we're
scream,
really
come to us.
Angry Egyptians. But no, so you have to go recruit 3 other people to watch this stream now because it's a scheme.
I feel like that seems fair. That seems fair, like a good rule. Yeah. I'm sorry. Back to the D&D. How many characters have you actually developed in the last 2
I've developed 4.
Okay.
And I could actually pull them up if I wanted to.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah, I will. So my very first character was, her name was Halloween. She was a cleric. The way I got into D&D was a drunk guy at a bar at an open mic said, "Hey, I need a healer." And I was like, "I can do that." And he was like, "Cool." And then he sent me an address and I showed up and I'm really glad I didn't get murdered.
Yeah, I feel like you need to watch a series of after-school specials that say exactly what mistakes you made with that one example.
Instead of luring me in with candy, he lured
Yeah.
me in with shiny math rocks.
At least they better be some good math rocks. Like,
Some
it shouldn't have
good
been just like a
classic
plain
math
deck. Like, I actually have you gave me some dice to play with for this one right here. I don't know if that shows up on camera or not. It's like red and green. This was the one that I was just like, oh, pretty. I never really understood the obsession with dice up until I saw this one, and I'm like, oh, I get how this could be an addiction.
So my very first, I guess I've developed 5 characters overall, because my first one, I use the D&D Beyond webpage to build my characters. I think that's the easiest way, but there are lots of different apps out there. No judgment. But Halloween was literally like, her whole purpose was to heal. She didn't have much personality. Like, her whole thing was that she stopped people from dying. So I got her name from like aloe vera. So I named her Halloween, like an aloe kind of situation. And she was very much just like lawful good, very boring, very milquetoast, frankly. I didn't know how to build like a backstory yet. So I was just somebody who was good at making others not hurt. And that was her entire personality. My next character was Ophelia, and Ophelia was also a cleric, but she was a cleric of the madness domain, which is... Oh,
you've told me some stories about Ophelia. This one gets weird, this character.
It gets real weird, because so when you're deriving your power from the madness domain, it operates a lot like a warlock would, where sometimes your god makes demands of you. At least that's how my DM played it. And there were several times where like things happened that I didn't necessarily want to happen, but because the madness had taken over me, they happened. And that's, it gave me it made me a powerful character, but it also made me like, I had a pet at one point, and in a fit of madness, I murdered my own pet.
Oh God. I'm not okay with that, Ruth.
I know.
We don't condone that on this program.
It was a little hawk, and he would fly around my head, and I killed the little hawk.
Oh my goodness! Did you just like love it too hard, or like?
I was in a blood rage.
Oh my goodness, it's terrible.
I learned the hard way that you really, really, really shouldn't attack another PC unless they've totally gone off the reservation, which is a player character. Because very good friend of mine in real life, but we butted heads in the game because he said something that hurt my my feelings. In response, I made him eat excrement for several hours in the game. Because one of my madness traits was that, like, my channel divinity was twice a day. I could inflict somebody else with a short-term madness. So his short-term madness was to eat, like, a strange substance nearby, and we were right by the bathrooms. So
in D&D, you can literally make somebody pretend to eat shit.
Yes. And I said, eat shit, as I pointed out. Eat shit, Jack, as I pointed out.
Perfect. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it was pretty great. He didn't think so. I got locked in an insane asylum for the next several sessions. That kind of thing doesn't come without consequences. Don't attack your friends, even if they say hurtful things. Use your words.
So I play a lot of like tabletop games in the sense of like board games, card games, stuff that has a little bit more of like a structure to it than D&D, which seems to be like really vast and open in terms of like what you're able to do. But the two things you just kind of touched on there that I'd like you to go a little bit more into detail is the amount of effect that the other players you have on your enjoyment of the game, but then also the dungeon master. It seems like that's something that's really unique to this type of game where there's like a person that's not even really playing. They're like controlling the game. They're like the god of the realm, essentially. How do you even get to the point where that sounds like fun? First of all, like that's
people I have found often become a DM out of necessity. That's how it often happens, is people will look around and be like, I really want to have a game night. Nobody around me is qualified to DM. Wait a minute. What even is being qualified to DM? I guess I'll just do it. That's how a lot of people I've heard they start. That's how I've only DM'd once, but that's exactly how it happened. We were in quarantine with my family. I really wanted to play a session, and I've played the most D&D out of all of us. So I was like, well, guess it's me. And it was something that was daunting. But once you have that understanding of the game, it makes it much easier to like view it from a broader perspective and build a campaign, if that makes sense. It's kind of like playing in creative mode on Minecraft, but some of the villagers have a little more of a mind of their own, you know?
That's of all the video games that you could have picked, like Minecraft is probably the one I literally have never played at all.
I'm trying to think of another, maybe like, okay, so maybe like the Super Mario Bros, the new one or not the new one, I'm old, the Wii U one where you could build levels of Super Mario Maker. Maybe something like that, where like you can put obstacles in their way, but you can't figure out how they're going to solve them. They may come up with something totally out of left field to deal with it. And then the other thing I think you asked was how other people at the table affect your enjoyment.
Yeah.
And that's actually very important, I found, is like, because it is all about group dynamics. So it really is true that like a rotten apple will spoil the bunch. Like our campaign, like I have a lot of love for everybody I've played with, but we've definitely we've probably cycled through 20 different people before we found like our group that will consistently show up and like play well with each other and just like move forward the campaign well. We never really have like kicked anybody out. We've had a couple discussions where it was like, hey, you seem to want this kind of campaign. We're kind of moving this direction. Like, how can we rectify that? Or is this the right fit kind of deal? And a lot of people have actually gone off and started their own campaigns from our campaign to do it their way. And that's great. And so it's very cool. It's exactly like a pyramid scheme. Our campaign starts 3 other smaller campaigns.
And that's how D&D takes over the world. So I got involved in the D&D campaign that I'm going to get into through improv comedy. I was reading a little bit about the history of D&D, which I'm curious to know how much you're aware of, like the history of the game itself, but also how important would you say modern D&D? I know that improv was a very big part of early D&D, but as the games evolved, it seems like there's been more rules, more books, more like established lore. How much improv is there still in the game? Talk about that a little bit.
So honestly, and this sounds like kind of a cop-out answer, but it would 100% depends on who you're playing with, because as cheesy as it is to say, like, D&D is what you make it. Like it, one of the campaigns we played was much more combat centered, and pretty much every session we were in some deep combat. So a lot of the nitty gritty, doing your attack initiative order, like going one by one around the table kind of deal. And then we've also had some campaigns where it's largely based on role play, and most of what we're doing is acting as our characters and interacting with these environments and stuff. So I would say improv is still hugely necessary in either the combat or the role play, which are kind of the two sides. But it is very possible that you get some people who don't enjoy improv as much, and maybe they do a combat heavy campaign to get more of that nitty gritty. Or you get an improv group who's really creative, who thrives in that role playing, character playing environment. So you can really mesh it to fit either want.
So I know that you and I have talked privately about some of the very weird stuff that happens.
I don't talk to you. Don't tell them I talk to you.
I know, I'm putting on blast. But some pretty weird shit happens at D&D. I mean, you literally made a person eat shit. We talked about that, but I always get a kick out of hearing all your stories about when stuff just gets weird. Mm-hmm. So what's some of the weirdest stuff that's happened to you while you've been actively in a campaign? Or even a step further, some of the weirdest stuff you may have heard about at a D&D table.
Well, we had a reoccurring joke where every time one of our characters went into the sewer, that particular character got turned into a Popsicle, because there would be some combination of them falling.
Were you guys playing when you were like 12, or?
They just kept like falling right as like an ice blast was going off, and then it just kind of storylines they got frozen into a Popsicle. So that's happened a couple times. Recently, somebody was like, not real. We were all going after something that was on this dead body at a funeral. So we were all trying to very carefully like greet guests and like try and grope the body and grab what we needed off of it with nobody looking kind of situation. And always there's the time I spent in the insane asylum. My character spent a good amount of time in an insane asylum in game after the eating shit incident. And that was weird. I like saw my mother in like another floor of the insane asylum and found out that's where she had gone. And then found out that like the big bad was my dad. So there's just that you never know. You never know what you're gonna find. I have the perfect. Sorry to cut you off.
Okay, no, go ahead.
So, and one aspect of D&D is there's always the stereotype of the horny bard, which is the bard class will always be. It's a stereotype. The bard class is always like, can I roll to seduce this monster? Like that's a big like joke in D&D is, can I roll to seduce the dragon?
T-shirt,
Yeah, exactly. And And so sometimes you do have those kind of cut to black moments where there's like a bounce, wow, like happening.
But there is no cut to black, and really, you're just sitting around a table,
and you're really just sitting around a table with your friends. And at one point, my character got kidnapped to be used.
This says the bard bangs the monsters instead of fighting them.
Yes, exactly.
Accurate.
Exactly accurate. One of my sorority sisters is here. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, Stephanie.
But I'm sorry that I got really excited and totally lost my train of thought. Oh yeah.
Was this a sorority you actually were in, or are you talking about Ophelia still?
No, this is actually a sorority I was in.
You cut back and forth a little bit. From
I know.
I
cut back and forth. That happens.
And you
in
have
D&D
5
too.
characters plus all of your own personalities. So
that's a lot. So I was kidnapped to be used as a virgin sacrifice, and in this situation, they were using virgin as in sexuality, not virgin as in virgin blood, which is we all know what the true meaning of virgin means. But anyways, so after that situation, I was like, it became kind of a character arc for Ophelia that she didn't want to be a virgin anymore. And I was like, this shit is dangerous. I don't want to be a virgin. I keep getting kidnapped for sacrifices. And my DM just made it impossible for me to get laid. Like, no matter what I tried, Ophelia could not get laid. And so then finally we were in a forest.
I'm going to start using that too. Like, yeah, man, I was totally trying to get laid, but my DM just, when it let it happen.
The dice roll, it wasn't there. And we were in a forest going back to fight this big bad, and Ophelia had this moment where I was like, wait, isn't this the same guy that kidnapped me to use the virgin sacrifice last time? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, okay, well, I can't go back in there a virgin. Like, that's not going to be good. And all of my teammates, they all looked at each other, and one of them raised their hand and was like, we can deal with that. So
at least it was consensual, man.
Consensual, and we took care of Ophelia's virginity. Okay,
you're all adults. Well,
you're
actually,
adults.
Wait, hold on. Actually, now that I say that out loud, didn't you tell me
she was an adult?
You had to age her up, though.
I did have
just because they started getting into creepy territory.
No, it was more that, like, the way we were in Waterdeep, and the laws of Waterdeep are really strict. So, like, kids are cared for, but they don't really have rights. So when I'd be going on missions with everybody, she was a 10-year-old originally, or like a 12-year-old, and she was getting kicked out of places and like not allowed to do things. And so I finally talked to my DM, and she got kidnapped off to the Maelstrom for several years and aged up to like 18. And so then suddenly she was allowed to do things in the world again, which was nice.
So Watershed may be brutal, but I mean, you at least have to have like an age law there.
Yeah,
nice
yeah.
Actually, that's pretty close to touching. There's something I found like just before we got on the air here that I was going to read, because I thought it was kind of like in the same storyline. But there's a D&D thread I found where they're talking about the quickest player death. And they said, the D&D storyline, I was running the first session of a new campaign. Everyone started at level 1. We had an elf druid, a half-elf ranger, a dragonborn sorcerer, and a tiefling rogue.
Tiefling. That's what I'm a tiefling rogue. Sorry.
A tiefling. Oh, I've actually specifically been told to talk to you about rogue, so we'll touch on that right after this. But a tiefling rogue, excuse me. As the party was going through introductions, the tiefling says, I'm a 5'2", 90-pound tiefling, and I don't like to be touched. Then the next one, I think you know this, I'm gathering. Then the next character, I'm a 6'3", 250-pound dragonborn, and I pat her on the head. And then so the tiefling, bites the hand of this dragonborn, rolls for damage, hits a nat 20, doubles that from 4 to 8 somehow, because dice are magic in this game. And then it turns out that those 8 hit points are exactly the amount that the Dragonborn starts with. And because it's level 1, nobody has any healing potions. Nobody has any spells. Nobody has any way to essentially not let this guy just bleed out because he got bit on the hand. But also, isn't that just such a beautiful, like, consent, like, allegory in so many ways?
100%. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna you mess around with that, and you're gonna get bit. Yeah, bottom line, and you'll bleed out.
Exactly.
So tiefling rogue.
Tiefling rogue. Yes.
Tell me, what is a tiefling? I don't even know how to pronounce it.
So there are like half elves and half orcs. A tiefling is essentially like a half demon, half devil. So the tiefling's gonna have the little horns growing out of the head, gonna have the little tail. And I didn't know this, but apparently it's a stereotype that bisexual women play tiefling rogues. And I'm a bisexual woman, and I didn't know that, and picked Tiefling Rogue twice now out of my own head.
Out of your 5 characters, you've been a Tiefling Rogue twice.
I've had 2 rogues, and one of them was a Tiefling Rogue. I misspoke, but like rogues are apparently very like I was scrolling through TikTok recently. Burn me now. It's okay. I'm slightly ashamed of it, but I love it a little. I don't know.
You're also basically famous on there now.
That's an exaggeration. Follow me at Funny for a Girl on TikTok. No, please don't. Please don't do that.
I did my first TikTok video literally right before coming on air to promote this, and it's bad, but I tagged you in it. So.
I need to look at that. But I was scrolling through TikTok, and I saw this woman walk across my screen and go, "Oh, hey, I see you, bisexual D&D player with some emotional trauma. What are you going to do? Send your Tiefling Rogue after me?" And I was like, like, that's not normal, right? Like, that's scary.
That hit a little on the nose, right? Yeah. Wow. That's what an odd stereotype, but clearly has at least some
merit. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other like strange stereotype characters that I should be looking at? Like, am I walking to a trap as like a long-haired fella? Am I like, is that why I picked what am I, a trident? No, that's the weapon. Tell me my character.
Oh, I don't. You're some sort of like water.
I'm like a water-based creature that talks to.
You're one I haven't played before, so I don't.
Something Neptune. I don't know. It's water themed. I like the water. I like swimming, so I went with that.
Of course. Well, you do scuba, so that makes sense.
Accurate. So I was specifically told to talk to you about rogues because I was told that a rogue would be a character that I would enjoy playing. I didn't really, I guess, fully understand what a rogue truly meant in D&D because when I first pitched it to my DM, my character, I got just a little bit of feedback about like, kind of like where my head was at and maybe where it should be for the character. What does a rogue do? Why is it such a popular, like I see rogue all the time when I see D&D memes and things. Why is it such a popular character?
Well, so part of this I do have to asterisk in that I haven't gotten a rogue past 1st or 2nd level yet because the campaign is just starting. So I will probably say some things. I'm probably going to say some things that are inaccurate, and feel free to correct me in comments that way. But for one thing, I think I think every party can benefit from having a rogue. Rogues are essentially sneaky and squishy, as I understand them. They are not supposed to be seen. They're not supposed to be taking a bunch of hits. But if they are behind somebody and not being seen, they can deal a stupid amount of damage. So rogues have things like action surges and sneak attacks that allow you to take multiple attacks and give at least one of those attacks extra damage in certain circumstances. So it makes you a very powerful, it makes you kind of a glass cannon, is I think the slang for it, is it's something that can deal out a lot of damage, but you can't take much.
You better be quick on your feet and roll good when you need to dodge.
So that's one aspect of the rogue is the action surge, and that gives you an extra of a certain few actions you can do. It's like you can disengage, which takes a whole action to do, so it can make it easier to run away because you can use your action surge to disengage so they can't get an opportunity attack, and then use your full movement and a dash to run away. So you have some things on your side that help get you out of those situations a lot faster. So there's just a few, and you can also choose some different, at level 3, you fill your, I don't know exactly what it's called, but your type of rogue, essentially. My rogue's going to be an arcane trickster rogue, which actually gives her some access to a little bit of magic, like a few little tricksy magic things, like mage hand, I think minor illusion is probably one of them, disguise self, things like that. So you also have like swashbuckler rogues, which will help you get some extra attacks in there. You can build a piratey type character. There are lots of different directions you can take a rogue, is I think why it's so popular.
Interesting. While you were talking about like the various characteristics, like the trickster abilities, my mind immediately went to comic books. It seems like there's like a lot of crossover in just the way that characters are built, and especially if you ever play like a comic book based RPG game of any sort, where you have like, I don't know, Captain America versus like Spider-Man or whatever the case may be. They're also going to have those same type of like character builds, essentially. Are there D&D style games that fit into those other types of worlds? And have you ever participated in anything other than just like literally Dungeons and Dragons? Like, is there a world beyond that?
So there are actually all sorts of Even if not officially sanctioned by D&D, there are all sorts of, kind of homebrew type campaigns and settings that you can run D&D 5e or whatever rules in. I personally haven't. All of them have been in the high fantasy setting because that's what the people running the campaigns like. And obviously, if someone's going to DM for you, you want them to do whatever's going to make them happy.
They're going to spend the most time.
Yeah, they're going to be the most
project.
time in it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's also, I think, a lot of times easiest for people to do because you can have a source book to look at and you don't have to build the whole world yourself. But there are some D&D streams I watch, like the College Humor Cast has a D&D stream on their streaming service Dropout and some on their YouTube channel. They did one called Unsleeping City that was fully set in New York. So like one of the people in the party was a Broadway actress. One of the people in the party was a drug dealer. One of the people in the party was like a Staten Island recent divorcee. Like there was like several different characters all coming together in this kind of magical world of New York. So there are all sorts of different environments you can skin the 5e rules on top of.
Interesting. What's 5e stand for?
It is the edition of Dungeons and Dragons that I play at least.
Oh, got you.
So there's, I know 3rd edition is sometimes popular. There have been several different editions, so it's just the way to identify.
5th edition.
Yes,
Got
exactly.
It. Okay, cool.
So if you're ever looking up rules online, you'll want to say like cleric spells for 5e, and like you don't just want to search cleric spells because you may get like 3rd edition, but 5e is by far the most popular on the internet right now. So.
Whenever I was given the character build sheets, like they sent me, I don't remember. I'd have to look up what resource it is. It might have been the one you already shouted out. But like, I remember the first time I'm like reading through everything, and I'm just like, this is a lot. It's like when they're like, can you go ahead and pick your character by this weekend? I was like, yeah, sure, that should take 2 minutes. No, like it's like literally like more reading than I have personally done in probably the last 3 years, just to like figure out all the different classes. And then what I thought was really interesting, you mentioned that you haven't actually gotten your rogues past like level 2 or 3, but apparently, and you may have had other characters do this, but when you get far enough out into the campaign, your character's leveled up enough, they can branch out. Like, talk to me about that a little bit, because that sounds fascinating.
So that is called multiclassing. And okay. I think there are different requirements for different multi-classes. So I think it's one of those things where you have to take it as a case-by-case issue. But I know, I'm trying to think of a good example. I haven't done it personally because you can only, at least how it's been explained to me, I could be incorrect, but you can only level your character up 20 times. And a lot of your characters will have some big godlike ability at level 20 for your class. So if you multi-class, you can only get to like level 10 rogue, level 10 cleric. You can't become a level 20 of both because it still has to add
20 is the
20.
Maximum number of levels you can have. Yeah. Could you have like 4 classes at 5 levels each, or am I getting crazy there?
I think you probably technically could. There are requirements for each subclass, so you'd have to meet them or discuss with your DM how you're gonna, make it otherwise. But I would say, yeah, if you had a DM that was willing to work with you and you're willing to put the time into developing that character, I think that'd be doable. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but that sounds cool to me.
I'm going to be like that kid whenever you're playing games, like video games that uses all the cheat codes. And I'm just going to have my character. It's just I walk into the room and I snap.
Oh, what's that called? There's a term for that. It's when because there's 2 different kinds of building characters. Sometimes you're building characters to be interesting to role play, and sometimes you're building characters to throw down. So it's like maximizing your character versus maximizing the interest of the character, I guess.
So when we talked last about that, you were explaining to me a little bit about the like role play aspect versus the fighting aspect, and I guess I don't really understand. Like, to me, the the fighting is role play, right? Like, I'm missing someone there, and they're both technically role play, but some of them are more like just battle centric, and some of them are more just like, so what did your character do this weekend?
So, okay, that's a good question. So in battle, typically what distinguishes it is you're in something called initiative order. So what that means is you roll one of these pretty ladies, and whatever number it pops up on plus your initiative modifier, you have that initiative. So if I had rolled a 17, that would put me towards the top of initiative. So that means the way my Dungeon Master does it is he folds over little note cards and keeps them in order so that he can read the order we're all supposed to go in. And so he'll literally go down the line and be like, okay, Ruth, what are you doing in this? The idea is that each round is 6 seconds. So in this
wow.
6 seconds of your time, what are you doing? So you have one attack action, you have one action, one bonus action, one movement, and one interaction, and that makes up your turn in the initiative order. So when it's your turn, you will say, you know, I'm attacking. That'll take up your action. I'm using bonus action. Maybe if I was a spellcaster, I could use a bonus action to cast a spell. If I had a bonus action spell for my interaction, this is why it can sometimes limit role playing. Because at least the way my DM plays it, your interaction, you can shout out like one sentence to everybody out there, but you're not having long drawn out conversations during battle. On your turn,
that's like your only communication amongst your party.
Well, so we still talk over the table and stuff, but as far as saying stuff in character, you're talking on your turn using your interaction. So you can't just on somebody else's turn shout out to them in character, like, oh, come over here or something like that.
And as far as that goes, like if your character didn't hear it in game from a character, they can't have knowledge of it. Like they can't have like your character Ophelia can't know things that Ruth knows unless Ophelia has.
That is the way it's supposed to work. Now there are some times in battle strategy where it's hard to separate the two because you do have that overhead view of the field, and so there is some grace given there. But especially when it comes to like other players' backstories, like there was a long time when the other characters knew the big bad was Ophelia's dad, but Ophelia hadn't told that to the characters in game yet, which normally I don't like revealing things that are that big. I like to keep those secrets, but it just had come out. And so the characters weren't reacting to it in game, but the players were like, what?
See, like that's been something that the DM I'm going to be playing with has been really like, he's made many messages to me and Richie, my co-host on Best Darn Diddly. We're both going to be playing in this campaign. Yeah. He's like, you guys cannot know about each other's characters.
Yeah,
you can't.
Yeah,
you gotta,
okay.
gotta keep
I like
secret.
it when people do that.
Yeah, he was like, if you have questions, talk to me. Don't talk to him because, like, you know, and like he's not being. I'm making him sound like an asshole. He's being super cool. He just knows I've never played. So like literally, I think the first time he gave me an assignment, the first thing I did was call Richie and be like, hey, Rich, I'm totally thinking about doing this, and this. And he's like, you're not supposed to tell me that.
yeah. And that I do think is the quote unquote best way to play is that you find as much out along with your characters as you can. But sometimes it's just not practical. Like with the campaign 0, with the session 0 we did this last week, none of us were together in the same spot yet, so we were all cutting between different scenes featuring one of the three of us, but we couldn't keep walking outside constantly. And like, so at a point you just have to suspension of disbelief and be like, okay, I know some things about you, but in character, I only know this much. But sure. He's doing the exact right thing, trying to keep that as minimal as possible, because that makes it a better game, in my opinion.
Very cool. Since you said the overhead view, that reminded me, I was just looking at some stuff online, like I said, and what I think is really interesting and an aspect of this I didn't even really know existed until recently is there's actually, like, it's not just in your head. They sell like models and figurines and essentially like action figures, I guess, for lack of, they're really die-cast models. You know more than I do. Mm-hmm. I think that's really cool. Like, how important is that to the game? Is that something that's actually a necessary thing, or is like, how does that work?
So it's going to come back to the same answer I keep giving, and that it totally depends. Because it is totally possible to play it just theater of the mind, no minis, and you're just like describing things and picturing it in your head. But it does kind of feel like playing mental chess. You do have to try and keep track in your head of where the enemies are, how far away they are, what the range on your spells are, what the range on your attacks are, all that kind of stuff. I do think the minis and the maps actually add a ton to the game. What we do is we actually have wrapping paper. Most wrapping paper has little 1-inch grids on the back, which is what you need for a battle map. So we'll just use sheets and sheets of wrapping paper, and maps we know we're going to return to, we'll draw them on in Sharpie. We have some little whiteboard maps also, but you know, you don't want to keep drawing the same map over and over again.
So is that like on like the day after Christmas? I imagine you just see like flocks of D&D players trying to get clearance. Like, I'll take anything you have left.
Anything you got. Yeah.
That's a good use of it, though.
It's great. They do sell like map paper, but it's a lot more expensive, and you could just use wrapping paper, and it rolls back up real nice. It sits in the corner, and it's great. And actually, some people get really into that. Like the guy who's DMing the campaign that we just had the session 0 for, he loves painting and like making models and stuff, and he's so good at it. Like the whole apartment, when you walk in, it's just like shelves and shelves of painted minis. And he actually built us for our White Run is Skyrim, Waterdeep. For our there's too many towns. For our Waterdeep campaign, he actually built us our bar. We had a bar called the Green Feather that our group owned together, and he actually made us like I watched him at one point, like cutting up little pieces of like construction paper for the roof tiles. Like, I feel like I need to be mean to him about it because I'm sure he's going to watch this. So it's really stupid how he's so into that, but it's also very cool.
I'm always so jealous when I see people that have actually like artistic
Oh,
ability.
I know.
You and I are comedians. We just had a troubled childhood.
Yeah,
they actually like know how to do things.
I know.
Like, it's impressive.
I actually don't have any minis to show because in this last session I brought them all to him and was like, "You will make better use of these than me."
Oh, cool.
I keep most of my D&D stuff over at that apartment because that's where we play. So
that's where you play. That makes sense instead of lugging it back and forth.
One of the things they have over there that I've contributed is they actually have little tiles, little dungeon tiles that you can literally like put out and like build a dungeon out of just these tiles. So you don't have to draw it out. Like it's literally like pieces of a puzzle essentially you can put together, but they're not a puzzle. They're just tiles that make up a dungeon.
Did you ever play, it's another board game, it's like called Castles of Mad Van Ludwig or Mad Ludwig, anything of that ring a bell?
It doesn't.
You know, I'm butchering that name, but if you've played it, you would have known it by that. I only say that because like that's kind of the concept of that game in general, is you're literally building a castle.
Betrayal House on Hill?
No, it's definitely called Castles of something. Castles of Mad Van King, there it is. King Ludwig. Castles of Mad King Ludwig is what it's called. I only bring it up because it sounds very similar. I guess they must have just kind of taken the dungeon building aspect of Dungeons and Dragons, and like the whole concept of that game is you're essentially building the most elaborate castle. And there's various ways that you actually obtain castle pieces, but it's physically laid out kind of like you said, where the different pieces, when arranged in different ways, could create like almost not an infinite, but like a huge variety of different, especially when you get the expansion packs and stuff like that involved.
That's something I've seen. I don't have them, but I've seen I get a lot of D&D stuff advertised to me on Facebook. And one of those things is actually dungeon dice, where it's a bunch of D6s, which are just what you know of as dice. And you roll them out, and each side is a different layout for a dungeon room. And then when you put them all together, like you roll the dice, that just makes the dungeon based on how the dice fall. I think that's
so you can use it as a standard dice or as a map builder.
Or as a map builder, yeah.
You know, I've actually gotten a couple of targeted probably not on your level at all, but just with like the little bit of D&D search I've done. I got one the other day that I was like, oh, I'm actually tempted. I'm a huge horror fan as well, and I told you I love everything. Horror, as in the genre. But there is these blood splatter dice that got advertised to me. So it looks super cool. They're very clean white dice that just look like they're splattered. And I think they're advertising that like no two sets are exactly alike or something like that, which is fun.
That's very cool.
You already showed off how many? It's 7 different dice that you need to play. Is that right?
I've got a full set right here. Yeah, it's 7.
Very cool. Like I know that there's actually another game you've probably played, Munchkin.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have played that. I actually keep a D20 in my gaming, like in a bag I have when I carry board games places, because if we play Munchkin, there's a card that basically gives you the ability that says you can roll any dice that you have. It does not specify that it has to be a dice that came with that game. It's like you can roll any dice anywhere that you have it. So I always put that die in my pocket anytime we're playing that game, just so I have that 20 point advantage if I need it.
Perfect.
It's huge advantage.
Huge
it's good times.
Advantage.
So other than being sneaky and cheating, like I just admitted to, what's the best advice that you could give me as a brand new player?
Well, I'll start with people in general and then you specifically. For people in general, it's something you actually already did very well. When I first started, I was too hesitant to make too many decisions about my character's backstory because I didn't want to seem like I demand it be this way. Like I'm always someone I'm hesitant to make too many demands or anything. So I didn't give myself much of any backstory, but that's actually much harder on the Dungeon Master. The Dungeon Master will love you if you give him something meaty in your backstory to cling to, something like you don't want to just be like, like what I did. Oh, I'm a healer. I'm good at healing people. I'm a nice person. Like that's very boring.
That's your whole
You can't
story.
torture somebody just for being a nice person. You got to give them like a family they love. You got to give them like a pet. You got to give them things have to have happened to them before this session so that they can be a playable character. So don't be afraid to make decisions for your character. Obviously, run them by your DM and make sure they make sense in the realm of the world, but don't be afraid to make those definitive statements for your own character, because that'll make it easier on everybody else if you're holding your own. And then for you specifically, well, now it feels like I've got to target something to you as a person. I just mean...
I was wondering about, when you first said that, I was like, oh man, this might hurt a little bit. I'm not sure if I'm prepared to listen to this truth right now.
Less of a shitty person, I think that'd be overall what you need to be a good D&D player. No,
I'm going to fail.
I guess the big thing is just don't be afraid to speak up, and don't be afraid to play a bit. Don't be afraid to have that emotion. Just be okay speaking up at the table and being a part of things.
Do you ever find, just because that right there sounds so much like improv advice, like that sounds exactly like advice that I've heard given in improv groups. Is there another side of that? Have you ever experienced working, or I'm sorry, playing? This sounds like a lot of work, but I'm sure it's fun. No, have you ever played with somebody that would, like, they speak up too much? Like, is there such thing as being like overbearing at the table?
Oh, there for sure is. But people will often kind of let you know, like the DMs are typically pretty good about like, okay, we've done that. We're going to focus on this person now. Like there are ways in the structure of the game that you can kind of segment that if you need to, but that is 100% a thing where, people will have one storyline they're really married to, and they try and drag everybody along with that storyline, even if nobody else cares about it, kind of deal. And sometimes
it's like all these characters died, I resurrect them, and we continue.
Yeah. So it is possible, but I also think sometimes it makes for good storytelling, because sometimes nobody else at the table has a want to do. I think it is a better problem to have people over participating than under participating, if that makes sense.
It's harder to ruin the game by being too involved, essentially.
Yes, exactly. Now, if you're being a bully or just being not nice, then of course it's not going to be a fun time. But like, just being too involved in itself isn't going to wreck the game.
Okay. So D&D pops up a lot in pop culture all the time. You see it in TV shows, stuff, movies, things of that nature. Do you have a favorite, like, pop culture moment where you kind of geeked out because you're like, oh my God, they're doing the thing that I do?
Oh, that's interesting. So I guess I can't think of, because here's the issue I have. Which you know from just knowing me, I haven't seen most movies. I'm not as exposed to pop culture as I should. I largely live in the universe of like YouTube and D&D streams. So most of my nerding out over D&D is they're playing
over D&D
on the D&D stream.
How many D&D how many campaigns are you actively watching right now?
So, okay, I'm only actively watching one.
Okay,
but
I didn't mean to derail you from the other question. Sorry, but when you said that, I was just like, wait a second. You said that very plurally.
Yeah. So there's only one that is still coming out that I'm still watching, but there's no hiding it. I'm obsessed with Dimension 20, which is College Humor's dropout stream, and they've probably done 4 or 5 seasons besides the one I'm watching right now. So I go back and rewatch them all the time. It's like comfort food for me. Like it's great. I guess I can't really think of any pop culture experience, pop culture references to D&D that really resonated with me, but it's probably because I haven't been exposing myself to enough pop culture.
We got to talk about the Community episode. Do you watch Community?
Oh, okay. Yes, I do watch Community. I actually watched that episode before I started playing D&D, so I didn't have that moment with it. Okay. That episode that one really hurt my soul, right? That's the one that hurts your soul a little bit.
There's definitely some bad things that happen.
Yeah, that hurt my soul a lot.
That was going to be so I was going to ask you, my next question was going to be, did you listen to Harmon Quest, which was a podcast where it was Dan Harmon. He was essentially, I don't know if he was DMing or if he was just involved in, I think he was just involved in a D&D campaign. But I mean, that's the person that, created Community and Rick and Morty, and he has some very funny friends. So that I didn't listen a lot, but Richie got really into Harmon Quest enough that he would send me clips periodically, and I would get in. They actually did an animated show for a while where they actually would physically draw out the things that were happening in their campaign, which was super cool. But since you didn't watch that or listen to that at all, that Community episode is largely considered, like widely considered, to be the best episode of Community, which is really a tall order because that is such a fantastic show.
Yeah.
That's Richie's he says that's hands down his favorite episode.
Huh.
It's one of mine, even though again I haven't really been that exposed to Dungeons and Dragons. But my God, like the way that they are able to take that world, like I guess I'm worried they set the bar so high that no campaign I could ever be involved in could possibly be that good, right?
Yeah. Okay, so I want to make sure we're on the same page, and I obviously spoiler alert for that episode. I mean,
yeah, I think it's safe. That show came out in 2009.
That's the one where there's kind of the nerdy kid playing with them, and Pierce is really mean to the nerdy kid, right?
Yeah. The character's name is Fat Neil, and he has a character that he's been developing for like years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
And Pierce, who is just feeling excluded from the group and being kind of an ass, essentially just turns his assholeness up to like 11.
Yeah. I don't even know if I got fully done watching that episode because I get so like upset when people are mean in TV shows that I will like start crying IRL and like get upset on behalf of the character and like abort the entire mission. Like I'm just like I read a Ray Bradbury story one time that like almost put me in the hospital. I was so sick.
That's Fahrenheit 451, right?
It was All Summers in a Day was the short story.
But same author.
Yeah. Same author.
And what was the book that you read?
It was a short story called All Summers in a Day.
Why was it that upset you so much?
So it's spoiler alert for the very old short story, All Summers in a Day. Basically, it's about humans have gone to live on Mars. And now most children who are living on Mars were born on Mars. That's the generational thing. But there's one kid in this class who actually came from Earth. She was a recent transplant from Earth. So the thing about Mars is that, or maybe it's some other planet, but I want to say it was Mars. The thing about Mars is that you don't get sunlight. And there's sunlight there maybe once every like 60 years or something like that, every 100 of years. So they were in school on the day the sunlight was supposed to come out. And the girl from Earth was so much more excited than all of her friends because her friends had never seen the sunlight. So they didn't know what they were missing. But she missed the sunlight so much from Earth. So she was so excited and couldn't stop talking about the sunlight. And all of her schoolmates made fun of her. So as a joke, they locked her in the closet before the sun came out. And then once the sun came out, they all got so excited they ran outside to play and completely forgot about her.
Oh my God, that's terrible.
The story ends with the teacher coming back inside and hearing like a knocking on the closet, and then they just open the door, and that's kind of where it ends. And she's just like crying in the corner. Yeah. That's dark.
Oh, yeah. I mean, literally, but no sunshine. That's not fun. No sunshine
at all.
All right, so you're an empath. You get very, very emotionally affected by things. I can see why that.
I literally, I don't think I finished that episode because I was so upset. Like it hurt me so bad.
That Community episode?
I literally don't think I finished it. I'll have to watch it because I was so like upset with Pierce. That's one of my big problems with Community was always that I hated how Pierce treated people so badly.
Yeah, it turns out after that show ended, a lot of that was real too. Chevy Chase was apparently quite the asshole to a lot of people on that show. Some of the stories that come out are pretty rough to hear, but still such an incredible show. I would encourage you to go back and try to finish it.
I will.
I don't know, maybe take a Xanax before you watch it or something, just to try to calm everything down a little bit. Did you know there's a second Dungeons and Dragons episode on Community?
I don't think
they actually go back and they revisit it.
It's after Childish Gambino left.
It was.
Okay, I think that's when I stopped watching. That's when I stopped watching.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
They actually all recently just came back and did an episode reading of the episode where Pierce died essentially, and they're reading his will. So Chevy Chase didn't have to be there, but they actually got the guy that played the Mandalorian on the Disney Channel. He was the person reading the will or whatever whatever was being left to everybody. That's the will, yeah. But there's this one point where he just got stuck because every time he tried to say the line, he just couldn't stop laughing, and that moment alone was well worth watching it. But also Donald Glover was back with the cast, and I mean, what a talent! First of all, the whole cast is amazing, and all of them on that live stream said that they were very into the idea of coming back for a movie. So, fingers crossed on that. But There is actually a second episode of Dungeons and Dragons in Community. It specifically deals with them trying to reconnect a character with his father, and the father is actually played by Tobias Funke, David Cross. David Cross is the name of the actor, comedian, and it's not as good as the first Dungeons and Dragons episode because that episode is just... But it's still, I think that especially if you're a fan, you would definitely enjoy it, and it's definitely worth a revisit.
Heck yes, I definitely will.
For sure. So you are about to start a new campaign. You just had session 0. What are your goals for your next several months, years? What do you see as the future of your new character? And tell us about your current new character.
So my new character is Jin Weissflower. She is a rogue. She will be an arcane trickster, but she hasn't gotten there yet because she's not level 3. Basically, I'm trying to think of how I can not give too much away in case anybody who hasn't joined the campaign yet watches this. My grandfather died recently in the campaign. My character's grandfather died, and so the first session 0 actually took place at my grandfather's funeral. And so another character actually plays one of the grave diggers, like the person who digs the graves in the funeral home. And then somebody else is somebody who knew my grandfather from way back when. So we all kind of come together at the funeral through weird circumstances. And there's an opposing house, the House Arcus, which are some other elves that are against us. And we think it may have been them that killed my grandfather, but it's under suspicious circumstances. So lots of intrigue and drama. And that's going back to what I said. Most of that is based off of my character's backstory. I wrote it and sent it to my DM and was like, hey, is this okay? Feel free to say no. And he just took that and ran with it in a great way. So we haven't even funneled into one of the book stories yet. It's all been Homebrew so far, which the campaign I ran was Homebrew. And I think that's very fun. So I'm really hoping my personal goal with this character is to be better about role-playing because I'm really guilty of being like, Halloween says this instead of just saying the thing as the character. Because I get so
develop a voice for it and mannerisms.
I'm partially regretting this decision, but Jin Weissflower has a New York kind of Staten Island accent, and I'm real bad at it so far. But we're working.
I love it. I love it. No, that's honestly that's something I struggle with a lot in improv. A common note I get is I'll have fun scenes with my partners and whatnot, but it's you're just playing a dude on stage.
Yes.
Every single time.
Exactly.
And I like to think I'm a funny dude on stage, but in improv, that's not always the goal, right? Mm-hmm. I'm often jealous of the people that I see. Or envious, I don't know what the right word there is, but the people that just make big, bold character choices and are hilarious. And I think it seems like there's some definite crossover with that. And even for stand-up, I could see, you could use your Jen voice to do a character on stage.
That's what I was going to say is that one of the big ways, because one of the other people who is in our campaign is also a stand-up comedian. And he and I have both talked about the fact that having to do he was the DM for the first couple of campaigns we did. And he will tell you that being a DM and having to constantly improv different voices for these characters widely expanded his range of act outs. And act outs are so valuable as a stand-up comedian that developing those voices and something that Brennan Lee Mulligan, who's the DM for all the D&D streams I watch, super talented guy, grew up going to LARP camps and now donates portions of his salary to the LARP camp he used to go to. He's a phenomenal dude. But he'll talk about how because of D&D, when he's out in the world and he hears an interesting accent, he'll catch himself trying to mimic it, trying to get it down. And it's so that he can add it to his vocal tool belt to DM. So he has this wide vocal tool belt. And that's one of my goals, both as a D&D player and as a person, is just to get myself more voices. Because I have the exact same issue. During my act outs, I'm just me. I'm just
just Ruth, just standing
Ruth,
at a slightly different
saying
angle.
A silly thing. Yeah. So
I think I have a fairly good Karen voice, but that's almost becoming cliche at this point. So
yeah.
I was ahead of the curve on that one.
I know you were. I know you were.
And I know you talked about your homebrew DM kit. You even I saw you showed me pictures of it. You made it pretty. You added a rainbow on it. You've got it right here. Isn't that adorable?
This is my DM board for when I DM.
Is that another thing that you hope to pursue more of? Do you wish to be a DM again in the future?
Here is what I will say about DMing, and it is true about most of the things in my life. I don't think I'm the best person to do it. I think there are other people who can do it a lot better than me. That being said, I do enjoy doing it, and I think I'm okay at it. And DM fatigue is a real thing. Like, you get tired of it's a lot of work. You get tired of being the DM, and sometimes you just want to play. It's a trap people fall into, that once they start DMing, they DM for everybody.
They only DM.
And that's really upsetting.
I was kind of wondering about that, because it seems like you'd be missing out on a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I fully intend to DM again, not in the way that it becomes all I do, but more to give other DMs in my circle a break kind of deal. If that makes sense. I don't think I'm necessarily the best person to be doing it, but to give people a break, I definitely will.
Well, and I mean, that sounds like a self-confidence issue more than anything. You're probably great at it. I mean, you just talked we're almost at our hour mark here. We're getting real close, but we just talked about D&D for an hour, and you're clearly passionate. So the fact that you're willing to do it, I think that's cool. I would like to play D&D. We've talked about it. I would definitely like to play D&D with you at some point in the future, either as a player or if you are the DM. I could also see that being real fun.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. Stephanie said my DM board was cute.
Hey, it is cute. She did a really good job on that. Yeah. And it's perfect now. You clearly only use it during Pride Month. No, you use it year-round. It happens to be Pride Month, so happy Pride.
Happy
That's
Pride,
cool. Yeah.
I want y'all to know my little brother just walked across this way down the stairs, giving me the weirdest look, because I've dragged this furniture totally out of alignment from where it's supposed to be, and I'm just chilling in front of the board game shelf.
Oh, okay. So that was a chosen background.
Yes, cool. I chose this on purpose.
That, I wanted to talk more about that. We're getting pretty close on time, but I will ask this last question, or possibly follow-ups. How much crossover do you think there is with people that like games like the ones that are behind you there, and people that enjoy D&D? I mean, are they relatively the same? Is there a lot of crossover in that Venn diagram, or is it like...
I would say there is some crossover, because a lot of places people will go to play D&D is the comic book board game stores that have those open play areas. So I think there is... It's not going to be everybody, but there definitely is an overlap. And I mean, I'm a good example of it. I love board games and I love D&D, and I think that's true of a lot of people. But there are also definitely people who aren't into the nitty-gritty confinements of normal board games, but are into D&D.
Yeah. I would almost think, just from our conversation and what I've seen, that there's more crossover with people that are like into RPG video games, and really specifically like JRPG video games, the really in-depth, lots of character development, multiple like games that literally take sometimes 60, 70 hours to finish, crazy amounts of time dedication. Because I love tabletop board games. I mean, a lot of times I think the fun that comes in that is that you can do it in like an hour. It's a good way to kill some time versus... this really seems like a full-on investment.
It is a commitment. Like, that's something that became apparent to me very early on, is that it's something you have to invest in. Like, I have it, whatever job I do, I put it out there, like, Wednesday nights, I will not work, because that is the one night I need off a week to decompress and do D&D. Like, I will not work.
You even skip comedy on Wednesdays sometimes.
I will skip comedy to do D&D. Like,
which is crazy.
It's very important to me to make time to do that. And that's another part of finding a good group, is making sure you have people on that same level with you, willing to work their schedule around making this work. That's what really makes a campaign work.
That's awesome. Well, I'm excited. I hope now that I'm better prepared for my upcoming campaign, which is actually going to be a podcast called Decidophobia and Dragons, I think. Yeah. So that's going to be, triggering on anybody with anxiety. So that's fun. But Decidophobia and Dragons, I'm excited to play. I appreciate all the advice. I absolutely adore you as a person and as a comedian. And I thank you so much for coming on the show.
Of course.
I always get in trouble when I plug your social media, but Ruth Banks is Funny for a Girl.
Yes. You can find me on social media at Funny for a Girl. That's funny_for_a_girl. And I'm everywhere. I'm even on TikTok, baby.
It could be She's Just Funny, but she chose to go with @Funny for a Girl, and she's very, very funny. Follow her, especially on TikTok. She already plugged that as her primary source of social media. I have one video on there now, plugging this video right there, so I hope you thoroughly enjoy making fun of me for that. This has been fun. I'm excited to do more of this. I will be back again next week, and I'm actually going to have my friend Skipper Bob. He's a theme park vlogger, and we are going to talk about Universal Studios and more than likely other theme parks too, but we're going to try to stick to just Universal Studios next week. Right now, stay with Fandom Friday and go check out David from the Tales from the Fandom. He should be going on actually right now. So check him out. Stick with Fandom Fridays. Check out Ruth Banks online and come back next week for more Mr. Most Days Off Loves Everything.